Hi, everybody. I'm here today in the Royal British Columbia Museum, one of my favorite places in the world, to talk to you a little bit about some of the ethical concerns that might come up when we think about storing and displaying artifacts from different people's cultures, such as the one behind me. The museum is located in downtown Victoria, BC, and is visited each year by thousands of tourists. As you enter the museum, you'll notice that there are many artifacts, but also, of course, the requisite IMAX museum and gift shops that you see in many different tourist locations. One thing you notice, though, is that there are a number of different indigenous artifacts that are around the museum. As you first walk in, you might notice the many different totem poles and lodge poles and other different indigenous artifacts that are located outside and inside the museum's atriums. The way that the museum collected these pieces has sometimes come under scrutiny, as many people have said that they have come by them through purchases which were underhanded or perhaps which happened under duress. Many people question whether the museum should have these artifacts at all, and are calling for many of them to be returned home, a process called repatriation, which has been started already. Museums like the Royal British Columbia Museum and museums around the world are trying to deal with this question. How should they deal with items which were taken from Indigenous groups in circumstances that weren't particularly above board? This is a difficult situation for many different museums, and trying to figure out which items should be returned and which ones should be continued to be put on display for people to learn about Indigenous cultures is a challenging one. Many different groups are grappling with that today. Over the next few days, I'd like you to make a judgment call on how museums should deal with Indigenous artifacts. I'd like you to review the Royal British Columbia Museum's policies on repatriation and decide, do they have it right? What changes would you make? Or which of their policies do you particularly agree with? Then present your findings as a presentation to your peers. We will use the following presentation rubric to help us with our presentations. Please make sure to review it carefully before you go ahead and start your presentations. Make sure you think about your effective communication, and that includes things like setting up your presentation to have interesting visuals and graphics to support your thinking. Okay, and also making use of appropriate language. That can be rhetorical questions, it can be grade level vocabulary, but thinking about how you're organizing your thoughts so that they come across as being appropriate and effective. I also want to see that you have a clear argument in favor of how museums should deal with Indigenous artifacts. And I also want to see that you understand both sides or multiple different perspectives about this particular topic. So make sure you present both sides before settling in on how it is that you would deal with these artifacts. I want to see that you have details and elaboration. So this should probably be a 2 to 3 minute presentation at the least. You can present it in many different formats. That could be as a video or as an oral slideshow that you present in front of the class, or in any other format that you choose. But make sure to get permission from your teacher before you go ahead and start. As you're doing your presentation and getting ready, make sure that you are thinking a little bit about what was strong about it or what you're working towards, and giving yourself a little bit of self-reflection along the way. At the end of the presentation, you will be asked to do an assessment of your own work and to provide justification for your success or areas you might improve.